You compare the rise of cyber weapons to the invention of the atomic bomb. Give us the lay of this new battlefield. Where are the biggest threats and who are they coming from?
Well, you know, the first comparison I do, Emily, is actually the invention of the airplane. Because when the airplane came in and the Wright brothers first showed it to the military, their first response was, this is great. We'll put it up over the enemy troops. We'll see where their vulnerabilities are, and we'll send in the cavalry, you know, like on horseback. And it was about 4 years before people began dropping bombs with airplanes. And ultimately dropped the atomic bomb, the ultimate combination of technologies that gave them the reach and the power. For cyber, we're just at sort of that World War I period where we've gotten past the thought that cyber is just going to be used for surveillance. We understand you can arm it. We understand you can blow up Iranian centrifuges with it and North Korean missiles. But we keep discovering other vulnerabilities that take us by surprise. And that's what the Russia hack was all about. I mean, just think, the election system was not on the Department of Homeland Security's list of 18 areas of critical infrastructure, the underpinning of our democracy, and it wasn't on the list.
So, is that where the biggest threat is coming from? Is it Russia?
Well, the four big actors I discuss in this book among American adversaries are Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And of that group, the Russians are the savviest. The Chinese are the most determined, but less interested in destruction and more about theft of intellectual property and so forth. That may change over time. And the Iranians and the North Koreans see it as a great leveler. The thing that they can use, because they know that for all their pursuit of atomic weapons, they're never going to use an atomic weapon. They can't. They know what the next 45 minutes would look like. Whereas cyber, you can dial up and you can dial down. You mentioned the Cyber Command change in strategy, which is in the book, and I wrote a little bit about this in the Times earlier this week, just in an excerpt from the book. Here, you have to think of sort of counterterrorism strategy. For a while, we were saying, we're going to go inspect everything coming into the border to see if there's a bomb aboard a freighter or an airplane. And then in counterterrorism strategy post 9/11, we started knocking down houses in Pakistan where you thought the bomb makers were at work. That's what Cyber Command wants to do here. They want to go to a place where they think code is being developed that is being designed to attack the United States. The problem is, you take that out, and the country you've hit says, well, wait a minute. We were just doing coding for, you know, a kindergarten through third grade educational software.
So how open is the Trump administration to being on the cyber offensive, and do they understand it?
Really good question, because when John Bolton came in to be the National Security Advisor a few months ago, the first thing he did was fire the two people who knew the most about cyber within the National Security Council arena. One was the Homeland Security Advisor, who's been replaced by somebody from the Coast Guard. The other was a longtime NSA employee named Rob Joyce, who had run the Tailored Access Operations Unit of the NSA. That's the unit that breaks into foreign computer systems. He was a cyber offensive expert. And they not only got rid of him, they eliminated the position and can't really explain to us, or haven't explained to us, why, other than to say, well, cyber's everywhere. It's part of all of what we do.
So how well armed, then, is the U.S. now, or is it too little too late?
We are very well armed, and we have absolutely no strategy around that armament, okay? So we've been investing in the weapons. And you can tell, you know, the operation against Iran was big. In the book, I describe a similar operation of dubious success against the North Korean missile program. However, we have not developed the doctrine under which would decide when we're going to use these weapons and when we're not. And we won't even talk about them in public. If you won't do that, you can't begin to set some guide rails of this is off limits. Election systems, nobody should attack. Civilian infrastructure that supports hospitals, no one should attack. Communication systems used by emergency workers, no one should attack.
And yet they're being attacked all the time.
They are. And so part of the message of this book is the solution to this is not just technological. Yeah, we've got to do better on the technology, but you're always going to be playing catch up in cyber defense. There's got to be the beginnings of some political solution. So
is there hope for that in this administration?
So far, I haven't seen much of it, Emily. There was discussion in the Obama years of cyber norms, and there was a UN group that set up to go do it. The last set of discussions they had last summer broke down, not really because of the Trump administration, really because of the Chinese in large cases. But if you don't begin to discuss how to control the technology, you're going to end up being on the losing side of it.
So U.S. infrastructure has been undermined, attacked. We're heading into the midterms. Is this happening now? Is it going to keep happening? Are our elections going to be undermined again?
Well, good question. One thing that helps when you're worrying about undermined elections is this time Americans know a little bit about what this looks like from the Russia hack. Doesn't mean it'll look the same way the next time. But, you know, in France, with the warning of what happened to us, the fake Facebook posts and all that didn't have a whole lot of effect because people were identifying it as coming from Russia. What worries me about our next election, not just 2018 but 2020, is there will be other countries that will learn from what the Russians did and will devise new approaches. And the constant problem in cyber is you're always behind the eight ball. The attackers are always thinking of new ways in, which is why you're seeing new defense technologies that look at sort of behavior instead of just past patterns. But we also need to begin to think about what the geopolitical solution is to this.
How vulnerable, even though they have new information, is Facebook to being turned into a weapon again?
Less vulnerable than they were 2 years ago when they were clueless.
But as you say, they move.
They do move, and you know, I spent a lot of time in this book talking to people at Facebook. You'll see Alex Stamos talk.
Right, former head security officer who is no longer the head of security.
I think he's still at Facebook, but
for now.
Yeah, for now. But he, a really brilliant guy. But he made the point that the reason they missed the hacks was that they weren't looking for them. They didn't actually understand the behavior on their platform. And that could certainly happen again.
Let's talk about North Korea, because you've reported on the U.S.'s efforts to disrupt North Korea's missile systems. Tell us a little bit more about how that happened.
So Kim Jong-un, same Kim Jong-un who showed up in Singapore with such a friendly smile and went touring the nightclubs.
And you were in Singapore as well.
I was. We were watching him go up to one of the hottest night spots in Singapore and hang out with all the millennials, and take selfies with them.
Gotta get your groove on when you're.
That's right, but not what you expect.
Signing international agreements.
Not what you expect of the North Korean leader. But it was good that he was there and like seeing what another society looked like. But he was launching something a few years ago called the Musadon missile, and my colleague Bill Broad and I noted that they were having an 88% failure rate on something that was a pretty well-established technology. We dug into it and sure enough found just what we expected we would find, which was a program that President Obama had accelerated called left of launch. So if you think of the moment of launch and your anti-missile efforts to intercept those as after the launch, left of launch is what you do to keep the missile from getting launched. And that's everything from feeding in bad parts, something the U.S. has tried for years, to cyber attacks on the command and control systems. The problem is we can't tell what percentage of their high failure rate was because of the U.S. program, and what was because they were North Koreans making mistakes, bad welding, bad engineering. And that's part of the difficulty with cyber. You don't always know how well your weapons are working.
So is this why Kim Jong-un came to the table, the bargaining table, and will the North Koreans stay there? I mean, how optimistic are you?
I think he came to the bargaining table for a variety of reasons. My guess is that the sanctions, and maybe even being scared of Donald Trump's threats, had probably had more of it to do with it, having to get some of those sanctions lifted. I wish I could be more optimistic about this. I think the president did the right thing in trying to go meet him and talk to him. We've never tried that in the past, since the Korean War ended in 1953. But that said, the agreement they came up with was much more vague than what Kim's father and his grandfather had signed on to, and there was no timetable for performance.